Where do we go from here? From the chaos, the fighting, the arguing, the censorship, the blocking, the shutting each other down, where do we go from here to heal our collective pain? This is the 200th episode of this podcast, and so much has changed over that time. We're all feeling the intensity of what this year has brought, but what you need to understand is that what we're feeling and experiencing has always been there. It's simply been brought to the surface. In this special episode, you'll learn why external solutions will never offer us the peace that we seek, how technology and the media is impeding your ability to move forward and heal, and 3 things that we need to do as a collective to begin our collective healing process. Now, if you are ready to dive into the inner work required to elevate your leadership and grow your movement, let's talk. I currently have a few openings for coaching and mentorship for 2021. Apply today at www.rubyfremon.com/let's-work-together. That link and all the other links will be in the show notes. If you have a question about this episode or you just want to say hi, please reach out and shoot me a text message at 1-781-336-0160. And if you dig this podcast and you want to receive weekly leadership advice and inspiration, let's connect via email at rubyfremon.com/connect. Finally, whether you are a loyal thought leader or a brand new listener, please take a moment right now to download a few episodes and drop a rating and review on iTunes. Help me get this podcast out to more leaders around the world. Now it is time to uncover 3 things that our world needs right now. Hey, thought leaders, and welcome to episode 200 of today's Thought Leader. 200 episodes. I can't even believe that I've recorded 200 episodes, and it's actually almost been 3 years since this podcast has been up, and so much has changed, both in our world, our collective external world, as well as my inner world. I've changed so much. In all of these 200 episodes, I've grown so much just as a podcaster, but also as a human being in our world. And I was sitting with the idea of this episode. What am I going to talk about? Episode 200. It's got to be good, putting a lot of pressure on myself. And quite frankly, the only thing that continues to pop up in my mind is to really talk about what we are experiencing as a collective. But I want to start by sharing just a little story. So a year ago, in November of 2019, I was in Peru. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know this because you've heard me on the podcast talk about my experience in Peru. And if you haven't yet heard those episodes, then I highly recommend you jump back to episode 155 and 157, where I break down what I experienced in detail when I was in Peru. So I was in Peru a year ago to sit in a master plant dieta with the Shipibo tribe in the Amazon jungle. And that experience within itself completely changed my life. And again, you can go back to those episodes to hear more about that. But what I want to start with this because what was interesting when I was there in Peru is I really got to know the way that the Shipibo tribe were living in the Peruvian jungle. I got to know what life was like when you're disconnected from electronics, from the internet, from the news, from the media. And I myself got to disconnect from all of that because when you're in diet for 2 weeks, you're completely disconnected from everything, just living in a bamboo hut in the middle of the Amazon jungle. It's quite surreal and also so calming. And I was supposed to be in Peru again to sit in another diet this month, this year. However, the borders there are still closed to Americans. And so it's kind of this weird moment for me because I had literally planned my entire year in terms of clients and programs and offers for everything to close off in October so I could get on a plane with my backpack and head off to the Amazon jungle again. And that's not happening. Um, the thing that I miss the most, and this is what I want to bring up, is their way of life and how everything is so different when you're in the middle of the Amazon jungle, completely disconnected. There is a sense of calm that washes over you, a sense of serenity, of peace. And sure, I believe that so much of that has to do with not being connected to the media, not being connected um, on the internet, and just only being connected to yourself and the jungle and the people there and the land. But when I went there, after the first few days of really adjusting to that, because there is an adjustment period, I felt like I could breathe again. I felt incredibly rooted down to Gaia, to the earth, to the people, to myself. But I felt like I could breathe again. It was as if every single distraction in my life had disappeared. And I was left with only me and the earth and the people who were there with me. And that was it. And there's such a sense of serenity with that, which is an incredible contrast to what we're experiencing now as a collective. Where is the serenity? I think back, I reflect back to that time in the jungle and the serenity that I felt, and questioning, like, where did that come from? And I realized that that came from within. And that's the thing, is we all have this sense of calm, of serenity, of peace within us. And yet we get distracted by the external world, by these external devices, by the media, by technology, by all the fucking noise in the world. And all of that has an impact on our beingness. And when we are all impacted by everything that's going on in our external world, that impact becomes compounded and creates a collective impact, an impact that we are all feeling, experiencing, breathing into, and suffering from right now. 2020 has been a pivotal year for many, many reasons. And as we are nearing the end of the year, many of us are feeling the weight that we've been carrying this entire year. Many of us are also holding on to the hope that things are going to get better just because this calendar year is going to finish and we're going to enter a new calendar year. And to you, I say, things are not just going to get better because we're going to enter a new year. It doesn't happen. We are going to carry the weight of this year into next year and into the year after and into the year after that. And we're going to carry the weight of everything that we're feeling right now through our lineage. Unless we start to heal as a collective. So whether you are hating our world right now, loving our world right now, or sitting somewhere in the middle, I want to remind you that we create our world and that we created all that we are currently experiencing as a collective. And we created this collective reality through our own individual realities. Everything always starts within. I think it's something we can all agree on is that the world is in pain right now. And 2020 has brought to light a lot of the pain that we've been holding on to, as well as brought to the surface some of the pain that we didn't even know was there. The pain that we are experiencing in this world didn't just come out of nowhere. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. It is the pain that we have within. And while many people may celebrate right now, if we're talking politics through the elections, they're also denying their suffering, our suffering. And instead of understanding their individual pain, they are fighting for external solutions to their perceived problems. But it's the perception of their problems that are off. And rather than diving into their perceived problems, they're rushing to find solutions. And this might be you. I mean, very well might be you. We're all doing this. But the solutions to our individual perceived problems can only be found within. It always comes down to that. We're exceptional problem solvers as human beings. Our brains are built to solve problems. Our brain will recognize a problem and it'll start coming up with ideas to create solutions. We also grasp to the external world. We grasp things, people, ideas, concepts, beliefs, presidents, political parties. We grasp all these things. We reach because we're trying to solve our perceived problems, when again, those problems can only be solved from within. So the suffering that we are witnessing in our collective right now is a collective suffering, which is rooted in our individual suffering. So where do we go from here? That's the $1 million question. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from 2020? Where do we go from all the turmoil that we've experienced this year, from all the separation, from all the division, from all the fighting, from all the angst, from all the pain, from all the suffering? Where do we go from here? Where do we go? Censorship has become rampant in our world. People are yelling at each other instead of listening. People are making enemies of each other instead of seeing the human in one another. And this is the problem. I touched on this in last week's episode 199, how we're dehumanizing each other and forgetting to see that behind every post, behind every single word spoken and shared, behind every video, behind every meme, there are humans being. And that we're all doing the very best that we can with what we know, what we have, and what's available to us as individuals. Believe it or not, Every single human being on this planet is doing their absolute best. And just because their best doesn't match up to your best doesn't make it wrong. And when you start to see that in each other, the world begins to soften. And that's what we need right now. We need to soften. There are 3 things that we need to do to collectively begin our healing process. And these 3 things need to be done collectively. We're each responsible for these 3 things. We need to connect, we need to listen, and we need to understand. We need to connect instead of divide. As much as you, me, or the next person preaches about connection, we're actually all doing our part to create a greater divide. And I've talked about this great divide that we're all in, and that's going to continue to rise throughout this year and probably into next year. We're in the midst of a great divide in our collective. So as much as we're all seeking to connect, we're actually contributing to the division. In order to connect instead of divide, we need to start connecting to self. That means you need to start doing your part by connecting to yourself on a deeper level than you've ever gone before. This is the time for you to connect within, for you to root down, for you to ground in, because we cannot connect with each other if we're not connected to ourselves. We cannot connect to each other if we're not doing our part to connect within, to connect inwards. We also need to listen to each other instead of belittling, shaming, or shutting each other down. I mean, it's pretty horrific what we're witnessing on social media, in the media, in conversations with each other. I mean, families are literally dividing due to differences in their political beliefs. Friendships are ending. People are publicly shaming one another, publicly belittling one another, and shutting each other down instead of listening to one another. And that's happening because people have stopped listening to themselves. People have stopped listening to their intuition. And again, maybe this is you. Maybe somewhere down the line this year, with all that's been going on, you stopped listening within. When you fail to listen to yourself, to your intuition, to your inner guidance system, when you fail to listen to your needs, to your inner voice, there's no way in hell you'll be able to listen to others, which is why we have the behavior of belittling, of shaming, of shutting each other down. Because we've lost touch with listening to self. And the third thing is we need to seek to understand each other instead of seeking to be right. Yes, this is about checking your ego at the door, and this is about understanding yourself on an even deeper level. This is about understanding your needs, your values, your beliefs, what you stand for, what you won't stand for, understanding your boundaries, understanding who you fucking are. Because I can assure you that things have shifted in your internal landscape this year. And it's up to you to get to know yourself again, to understand yourself again, because we will never understand each other. We will continue to seek to be right if we're not seeking to understand our individual selves. We all get to do our part in this collective healing process. And that begins right now. You get to witness how you're showing up for yourself, for others, both online and offline. You get to witness who you're being in this world. Take the focus off other people. Take the focus off politics. Take the focus off the media and start focusing on yourself. And make the necessary shifts to connect, to listen, and to understand who you be. And that starts by making those shifts within. So that is my message for you on it. This special episode number 200. If this resonates with you in any way, shape, or form, please share this podcast episode on your social media feeds. Share it with a friend, share it with your loved ones. Because this is a message that is far too important to keep to yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Today's Thought Leader, where I'm challenging you to activate the leader within. If you want to learn more about how we can work together in 2021, just head to rubyfremon.com/let's work together. That's let's-work-together. Be sure to download a few episodes and drop a rating and review on iTunes. By doing so, you will help me get this podcast out to more leaders around the world. And as always, if you have a question about this episode or you just want to connect, please shoot me a text message at 1-781-336-0160. And just remember to mention episode 200. And finally, connect with me on social if we're not already connected. My handle is at @IamRuby. And if you prefer email, you can just head to rubyfremon.com/connect. Make sure you check back on Monday to learn the art of standing out with a strategic multimedia consultant and expert on perception in popular culture, Jamie Mustard. This is a really phenomenal conversation, and I really look forward to sharing that one with you. Thank you, leaders, and remember to activate the leader within.